The silence on the Aegis was deafening. Lyra Min had grown accustomed to it over the past 3 months since she'd awakened from cryo-sleep, but sometimes the weight of it still pressed down on her chest like a physical thing. She was the only one conscious aboard the rescue vessel, the sole survivor of a catastrophic system failure that had left the other pods in permanent stasis. 98 lives reduced to unresponsive biological matter, preserved perfectly in their frozen tombs. Lyra pressed her palm against the cool glass of the observation deck. Beyond it stretched the vast emptiness of space, punctuated by the faint glow of distant stars. Among them, growing steadily larger with each passing day, was Proxima IV, their destination. "Eos, run diagnostics on the signal again," she commanded, her voice cutting through the silence. The ship's AI responded immediately, its voice modulated to sound reassuringly human. "Analysis complete. Dr. Min. The signal contains embedded genetic markers consistent with human DNA sequencing. Specifically, it appears to be encoded with markers from the Prometheus Project." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The Prometheus Project, Earth's last-ditch effort to preserve humanity's genetic legacy before the planet became completely uninhabitable. She had been part of it, once, before being reassigned to the Aegis rescue mission. "Could it be survivors?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. No one was supposed to be on Proxima IV. The planet had been designated for future colonization, not immediate settlement. "Insufficient data," Eos replied. However, the signal structure suggests deliberate encoding. This was not generated by random environmental factors. Lyra closed her eyes, weighing her options. The Aegis's mission parameters were clear: locate and retrieve any human survivors scattered throughout the galaxy after Earth's evacuation. The ship was one of dozens sent out as humanity's lifeboats dispersed across the stars. Their original course had been set for the Kepler system, where a distress beacon had been detected. But this signal, this impossible SOS from Proxima IV, had diverted their path 3 months ago. "How long until we reach orbit?" she asked. 17 hours, 14 minutes at current velocity. Eos answered. Lyra nodded, her decision made. "Prepare landing protocols. I'm going down to the surface." "Dr. Min, I must advise against solo expedition. Proxima IV's atmospheric conditions are within human tolerance but potentially hazardous. Additionally, without knowing the source of the signal, I'm the only one who can go." "Eos," Lyra interrupted. "Everyone else is either dead or won't be waking up unless we find a facility with advanced medical capabilities." She pushed away from the window, moving toward the science bay to prepare her equipment. "And if there are human survivors down there, I'm not leaving them behind." The AI fell silent, but Lyra could almost feel its disapproval radiating from the ship's systems. She understood its concern, with a functioning crew of 1. The Aegis was already in a precarious position. If something happened to her on the surface, there would be no one left to continue the mission. But the signal had changed everything. Genetic encoding was not something that occurred naturally. Someone, or something, had deliberately sent that message, using human DNA as its cipher. In the science bay, Lyra began assembling her expedition kit. Environmental suit, sample collection equipment, portable analysis tools, emergency rations, weapons, standard protocol for unknown planetary exploration. As she worked, her gaze drifted to the holographic display embedded in her workstation. It showed a rotating image of Earth as it had once been. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in mesmerizing patterns. Not the ravaged, toxic wasteland it had become in its final days. This was Earth as Lyra remembered it from her childhood, before the cascade of environmental catastrophes had rendered it uninhabitable. "Play message," she said softly. The hologram shifted, and the face of Dr. Kellen appeared, her mentor, the lead scientist on the Prometheus Project and the architect of humanity's desperate diaspora. "If you're seeing this, Then the worst has happened. His recorded message began. The lines on his face were deeper than Lyra remembered, his eyes haunted by the weight of their failing world. Earth is lost to us now, but humanity survives, scattered among the stars. Remember what makes us human, Lyra. Not just our DNA, but our capacity for empathy, for connection. In preserving our species, we must not lose our humanity. The message ended, as it always did, with his tired smile. The hologram froze on that expression, hope and despair perfectly balanced. Lyra touched the display, causing it to flicker. "I'll remember," she promised. Though Dr. Kellan was long dead, his ashes scattered across the toxic winds of a dying Earth. With her preparations complete, Lyra sealed her kit and headed for the shuttle bay. In less than a day, she would set foot on Proxima 4 and discover the source of the mysterious signal. She tried not to dwell on what she might find, or what might find her. "Else," she called as she entered the shuttle. "If I don't return within 72 hours, resume course to the Kepler system as originally planned." "Understood, Dr. Min," the AI responded. "However, I calculate a 78.3% probability that such action would be premature. I suggest extending the window to 72 hours, Lyra repeated firmly. "If I'm not back by then, I'm not coming back." The shuttle doors sealed with a pneumatic hiss, cutting off any further objections from Eos. As the small craft detached from the Aegis and began its descent toward Proxima 4, Lyra felt a strange mixture of dread and anticipation building in her chest. Whatever awaited her on the surface, she was about to become the first human to set foot on this distant world. She only hoped she wouldn't be the last. The descent through Proxima 4's atmosphere was rougher than expected. The shuttle shuddered violently as it cut through swirling clouds tinged with an unsettling reddish hue. Lyra gripped the manual controls, overriding the autopilot when the turbulence became too severe for the computer to navigate safely. "Come on," she muttered through gritted teeth as warning lights flashed across the console. The shuttle's heat shields were holding, but just barely. Another violent shake nearly threw her from her seat despite the restraints. Then, abruptly, they broke through the cloud layer, and Lyra gasped. Below stretched a landscape both alien and hauntingly familiar. Rolling plains of silver-blue vegetation covered the terrain, punctuated by crystalline formations that caught the light of Proxima Centauri and refracted it in prismatic bursts. In the distance rose what appeared to be structures, not natural formations, but the unmistakable geometric precision of architecture. "Impossible," Lyra breathed. According to all records, Proxima 4 was uninhabited. It had been selected for future colonization precisely because it showed no signs of intelligent life. The shuttle's sensors began to ping rapidly, alerting her to the source of the genetic signal. It was coming from a massive complex nestled in a valley about 30 kilometers from her current position. Lyra adjusted course, guiding the shuttle toward the signal source. As she drew closer, the structures resolved into a sprawling facility that bore the unmistakable hallmarks of human design, or at least, design inspired by human architecture. Sleek, curved buildings connected by transparent tubes spread across the valley floor, surrounded by what appeared to be experimental agricultural fields. She set the shuttle down on a flat area that might once have been a landing pad, now partially overgrown with the silver-blue vegetation. The engines powered down with a whine that faded to silence, leaving only the soft beeping of the shuttle's systems. Lyra ran a quick atmospheric analysis. The outside air was breathable, oxygen levels slightly higher than Earth standard, nitrogen slightly lower, trace elements within acceptable parameters, no detected pathogens or toxins. Still, she sealed her environmental suit before cycling the airlock. Caution had kept her alive this long. She wasn't about to abandon it now. The moment she stepped onto the surface of Proxima 4, Lyra felt the difference in gravity, about 90% of Earth normal. Each step had a slight bounce to it, giving her movements an almost dreamlike quality. The air, even filtered through her suit, carried unfamiliar scents, metallic and sweet simultaneously. She activated her handheld scanner, following the signal toward the largest structure in the complex. The building rose like a silver mushroom, its domed roof gleaming under the reddish light of Proxima Centauri. No lights shone from within, no movement betrayed the presence of inhabitants. Yet the signal continued to pulse steadily, drawing her forward. The entrance was a circular door, similar to airlock designs used on Earth's space stations. Lyra examined the control panel beside it, recognizing the interface despite its advanced appearance. Human design, she confirmed aloud, recording her observations, or derived from human technology. Estimated age of the facility, at least a century, possibly older. She pressed her gloved hand to the panel, not expecting it to respond to her touch. To her surprise, the panel illuminated, scanning her palm through the material of her glove. A series of lights flashed in sequence, and the circular door spiraled open with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Genetic recognition, Lyra murmured, unnerved. The system had somehow identified her as human, despite the barrier of her suit. More troubling was the implication that it had been programmed to admit humans. Specifically, the interior was dimly lit by bioluminescent strips that pulsed gently along the walls and ceiling. They brightened as she entered, as if responding to her presence. The corridor curved gently downward, leading deeper into the structure. Lyra advanced cautiously, scanner held before her like a shield. The readings were becoming increasingly strange, energy signatures unlike anything in her database, biochemical markers that seemed to blend organic and synthetic elements. "Eos, are you receiving my telemetry?" she asked, the comm link to the shuttle maintaining her connection to the ship's AI. Static crackled for a moment before Eos's voice came through. "Affirmative. Dr. Min. However, there is significant interference. Your biological readings are unusual." "Explain," Lyra demanded, pausing in her advance. "Your neural patterns are showing subtle alterations. Nothing dangerous, but your brain activity is synchronizing with some external field. I recommend immediate return to the shuttle." Lyra frowned. She felt normal, better than normal. Actually, the fatigue and stress of the past 3 months seemed to have lifted from her shoulders. Her mind felt clearer, sharper. "Negative, Eos. I'm continuing to the signal source. Monitor my vitals and alert me if they approach critical thresholds." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Lyra's breath away. Circular in design, its walls rose at least 30 meters to a domed ceiling that appeared to be made of some transparent material. Revealing the alien sky above, the floor was a mosaic of what looked like circuitry, glowing faintly with the same bioluminescence as the corridor. But it was what occupied the center of the chamber that made Lyra freeze in her tracks. Tanks. Dozens of them, arranged in concentric circles. Each was filled with a clear fluid that bubbled gently, and each contained what appeared to be a human form, but not quite human. The figures floated suspended in the liquid, eyes closed, bodies modified in subtle and not so subtle ways. Some had additional limbs that looked more mechanical than biological. Others possessed enlarged cranial structures. Still others had skin that seemed to shimmer with embedded technology, like living circuits. And they were all alive. The scanner confirmed it, detecting complex electrical activity consistent with advanced neural functioning. "What is this place?" Lyra whispered, moving closer to the nearest tank. The figure inside was female, or had been. Her skin was bound to the point of translucence, revealing a network of veins that glowed with an internal light. Where her eyes should have been were smooth, sealed lids that somehow suggested they had never opened. Her limbs were elongated, joints augmented with what appeared to be nanomechanical enhancements. Genetic engineering, Lyra realized, her scientific mind cataloging the modifications even as her human heart recoiled from the implications. These were humans, modified, evolved. The signal that had led her here pulsed stronger now, emanating from a console at the far side of the chamber. Lyra approached it cautiously, her scanner still recording everything. The console activated as she neared, holographic displays shimmering to life. Sequences of data scrolled rapidly, genetic code, neural patterns, biochemical formulas. Lyra recognized some of it from her work on the Prometheus project, but much was utterly foreign to her understanding. "Eos," she said, voice tight with tension. "I'm transmitting this data to you. Analyze and store." "Transmission received," Eos confirmed. "Dr. Min, preliminary analysis suggests these are records of human genetic experimentation spanning multiple generations. This facility appears to be a continuation of the Prometheus project, but taken in directions never authorized by the original parameters." Lyra's blood ran cold. The Prometheus project had been established to preserve human genetic diversity, not to fundamentally alter what it meant to be human. Yet, the evidence floating in the tanks around her suggested that someone had used the project's resources to pursue a radical evolutionary agenda. A sound behind her made Lyra spin around, hand moving instinctively to the weapon at her hip. One of the tanks was draining, its fluid receding rapidly. The figure inside, a male form with a crystalline growth pattern across his chest, began to move. Fingers twitching, eyelids fluttering. Lyra backed away, drawing her weapon. "Eos, I may have triggered some kind of awakening sequence. Prepare the shuttle for emergency departure." Before Eos could respond, a voice spoke, not from the awakening figure, but from everywhere at once, resonating through the chamber with perfect clarity. "You will not be harmed, Lyra Min. You are the progenitor. You are welcome among the inheritors." Lyra froze, weapon still raised. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" The voice held a strange quality, as if multiple people were speaking in perfect unison. "We are the culmination of your work, the fulfillment of humanity's potential. We have waited long for your arrival." "My work?" Lyra shook her head, confusion warring with growing dread. "I never authorized any of this. The Prometheus project was meant to preserve humanity, not transform it. Not your work in that limited time frame," the voice clarified. "Your work across a much greater span. The genetic signal that brought you here was created from your own DNA template, extracted from the original Prometheus database." The implications struck Lyra like a physical blow. "That's impossible. The signal would have had to be sent over a century ago, when this planet was first catalogued for potential colonization. I wasn't even born. Time is less linear than your current perception allows." The voice replied with what might have been amusement. "But explanations can wait. You must be properly integrated before the council convenes." Before Lyra could respond, the floor beneath her began to glow more intensely. She tried to move, but found her muscles no longer responded to her commands. A sensation like warm liquid began to flow through her veins, rising from her feet upward. "Eos!" she called desperately. "Emergency protocol! Alpha, get the ship!" The warmth reached her brain, and Lyra's world dissolved into brilliant light. When consciousness returned, Lyra found herself in a different chamber, smaller, more intimate, with walls that seemed to pulse with living light. She was lying on a platform that conformed perfectly to her body, supporting her in surprising comfort. She was no longer wearing her environmental suit. Instead, she was dressed in a close-fitting garment that seemed to shift colors with her breathing, moving from deep blue to violet and back again. "Your biological functions have been stabilized," said a voice from nearby. "The transition was more difficult than anticipated. Your neurological structure resists certain modifications." Lyra turned her head to see a figure standing beside her platform, humanoid in general shape, but clearly one of the modified beings she had seen in the tanks. This one appeared female, with skin that held an opalescent sheen and eyes that were entirely silver, without pupil or iris. Her movements as she adjusted something on a floating panel were fluid, almost hypnotic in their precision. "What have you done to me?" Lyra demanded, surprised to find her voice working normally. "Nothing irreversible," the being assured her. "We have merely optimized your biological processes to withstand Proxima 4's environmental factors. Your immune system has been enhanced, and your cellular repair mechanisms accelerated. You remain fundamentally unchanged." Lyra didn't believe that for a moment. She could feel differences within herself, subtle alterations in her perception, an awareness of her body's functions that had never been so acute before. "Who are you? What is this place?" she asked. Sitting up cautiously, the platform adjusted to support her new position. "I am Arya," the being replied. "Once, I had a designation similar to yours, a family name, a history. That was many cycles ago. Now, I am simply Arya, geneticist of the third sequence." She gestured to the chamber around them. "This is the Nexus, the central hub of what was once Outpost Prometheus 9. Now, it is the primary developmental center for the Inheritors." "The Inheritors," Lyra repeated. "You called me progenitor. Explain." Arya's expression remained serene, but something like excitement vibrated in her voice. "Your genetic template was the foundation for the Accelerated Evolution Protocol. Your work on the original Prometheus project included experimental gene therapies that became the cornerstone of our advancement. You are, in essence, the ancestor from whom we all descend, though with significant modifications across the generations." Lyra struggled to process this information. "That's not possible. My research was theoretical. The applications were never approved for implementation." "On Earth, perhaps," Arya acknowledged. "But this outpost operated under different directives. When Earth's environment collapsed more rapidly than predicted, certain contingency measures were activated. A subset of the Prometheus database was transmitted to outposts like this one, with instructions to pursue all possible avenues for human survival, including radical evolution." "How long?" Lyra asked, a terrible suspicion forming. "How long has this been going on?" "By your calendar, approximately 230 years, Arya replied calmly. "We are now in the 15th generation of Inheritors, each more advanced than the last." The room seemed to spin around Lyra. 230 years. But that would mean the evacuation of Earth, she said slowly. The rescue missions. They were never meant to find survivors, were they? They were a backup plan. Insurance. Arya inclined her head. Precisely. The Aegis and ships like it were launched with dual purpose, officially, to locate and retrieve scattered human colonies. Unofficially, to preserve unmodified human genetic stock in cryostasis for future contingencies. She paused, studying Lyra with those unsettling silver eyes. "You are the first to awaken and reach us. Others may follow, if their ship's systems function as designed." Lyra swung her legs over the edge of the platform, testing her strength. Her body responded normally, better than normally. In fact, she felt stronger, more balanced. "And what happens to these unmodified humans when they arrive?" she asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "They are assessed for genetic viability and integration potential," Arya said matter-of-factly. "Those with desirable traits are incorporated into the evolutionary program. Those without..." She made a small gesture that somehow conveyed both regret and dismissal. Anger flared in Lyra's chest, hot and clarifying. "You're talking about human beings, not raw material for your experiments." "We are all human," Arya corrected gently. "Simply at different stages of development. The Council believes that clinging to outdated forms is inefficient. Evolution demands progress." "The Council," Lyra repeated. "I want to meet them, now." Arya's expression shifted subtly, the first real emotion Lyra had seen from her. That is, inadvisable at present. Your integration is incomplete. The psychological adjustments. I'm not interested in being integrated or adjusted. Lyra cut her off. I want answers, and I want to know what happened to my ship and its AI. Your vessel remains in orbit, maintained by automated systems, Arya said. Your AI has been temporarily isolated to prevent interference with Nexus operations. It will be restored to you when the Council deems it appropriate. Lyra took a step toward her, fists clenched. That's not good enough. I need to contact my ship. Please remain calm. Progenitor, Arya said, backing away slightly. Elevated emotional states can interfere with the stabilization process. The Council will convene soon to discuss your arrival. Until then, I'm a prisoner. Lyra finished for her. A guest, Arya corrected. One of great significance to our society. Rest assured, no harm will come to you here. Before Lyra could respond, the wall behind Arya shimmered and parted, revealing a corridor beyond. 3 more inheritors stood there, their modified bodies similar to Arya's, but with variations that suggested different specializations. The Council requests your presence, geneticist, one of them said, voice melodious but emotionless. The integration metrics are unexpected. Arya turned to them, a subtle tension in her posture. I will attend immediately. She glanced back at Lyra. Rest, recuperate, food and hydration are available there. She indicated a panel in the wall that slid open at her gesture, revealing what appeared to be sustenance of some kind. I will return when the Council has concluded its deliberations. With that, she glided out of the chamber, joining the other inheritors. The walls sealed behind them, leaving Lyra alone. Immediately, she began exploring her surroundings, looking for weaknesses, for technology she could exploit. The chamber was roughly circular, with the platform she had awakened on at its center. The walls were smooth, seemingly made of the same bioluminescent material she had seen throughout the facility. No obvious doors or controls were visible, except for the panel that had opened to reveal the food. Lyra approached it cautiously. Inside were containers holding what looked like nutrient gel in various colors, along with a clear liquid that analysis would probably confirm was water, though perhaps modified in some way. She ignored these for now, focusing instead on understanding her captivity. Because despite Arya's polite terminology, that's exactly what this was. Eos, she said aloud, hoping against hope that her comlink might still function. Eos, if you can hear me, initiate Protocol Icarus. No response. Either the comm was disabled, or Eos truly had been isolated as Arya claimed. Lyra closed her eyes, trying to think. The inheritors had made a mistake in leaving her alone. If they truly believed she was their progenitor, they clearly didn't understand her very well. She had not survived Earth's collapse and the subsequent dangers of space by being passive. She ran her hands along the walls, searching for seams, for any indication of how the doorway had formed when Arya left. The material felt warm to the touch, almost like skin, and seemed to react subtly to her contact, brightening slightly where her fingers pressed. An idea formed. If this technology was derived from the Prometheus project, and if her genetic template had truly been used in its development, then perhaps... Lyra pressed her palm flat against the wall where Arya had exited. She concentrated, willing the surface to recognize her, to respond to her DNA just as the outer door had done. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the wall began to shimmer, its surface becoming translucent. It didn't part completely as it had for Arya, but it thinned enough that Lyra could see through to the corridor beyond. Empty. No guards. No observers. Either they were very confident in their security, or they truly didn't consider her a prisoner who might try to escape. Lyra pressed harder, focusing her will through her palm. The wall thinned further, becoming almost insubstantial. She pushed, and her hand passed through the membrane-like surface as if through thick liquid. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, pushing her entire body through the resistant barrier. It clung to her like a second skin for a moment before releasing her with a soft sound, like a sigh. The corridor outside was dimly lit, curving away in both directions. Lyra hesitated, trying to orientate herself. If she could find a communication terminal, she might be able to contact Eos. If she could find her equipment, she might be able to defend herself. If she could find a way to the surface. A distant sound made the decision for her. Voices, approaching from the left. Lyra turned right, moving as quietly as possible down the curving corridor. The architecture was organic, flowing, with no sharp corners or straight lines. Doorways opened into chambers of various sizes, some empty, others filled with equipment that Lyra didn't recognize but that had the distinctive aesthetic of advanced biotechnology. She paused at one open doorway. Peering cautiously inside, the room beyond appeared to be some kind of laboratory, with floating displays showing genetic sequences and neural maps. No one was present. Lyra slipped inside, drawn to a familiar shape on one of the workstations, her handheld scanner. They had taken it from her, along with her suit, but had apparently brought it here for analysis. She grabbed it, checking its functions. Still operational, though its connection to the shuttle was blocked by whatever shielding permeated the facility. A display flickered nearby, catching her attention. It showed what appeared to be a map of the facility. Complex, multi-leveled, extending both above and below ground. Lyra studied it quickly, identifying her approximate position and searching for anything that might help her escape. There, a chamber labeled Communication Nexus several levels up. If she could reach it, she might be able to contact Eos, override whatever isolation protocols the inheritors had implemented. Just as she was memorizing the route, a shadow fell across the doorway. Lyra spun around, raising her scanner like a weapon. A young inheritor stood there, obviously startled by her presence. This one appeared male, with skin that had a bluish tint and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Unlike Arya and the council members, his modifications seemed less extensive, his form more recognizably human. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither moving. "You're her," he finally said, his voice holding an emotion that Lyra couldn't immediately identify. "The progenitor." Lyra didn't lower her scanner. "And you are?" "Elian," he replied. "8th sequence, neurological division." He hesitated, then added, "You shouldn't be here. If the council discovers you've left your chamber..." "They'll what?" Lyra challenged. "Kill me. I thought I was too valuable for that." Elian shifted uncomfortably. "Not kill, but the integration process can be accelerated, made less voluntary." His gaze dropped to the scanner in her hand. "You're trying to contact your ship." It wasn't a question, but Lyra nodded anyway. No point in denying the obvious. To her surprise, Elian stepped into the laboratory, closing the door behind him. "I can help you," he said quietly, "but not here. We need to move quickly." Lyra regarded him suspiciously. "Why would you help me?" "Because not all inheritors agree with the council's directives," Elian said, his glowing eyes intense. "Some of us believe that evolution should be a choice, not a mandate. That the emotional capacity of unmodified humans is not a weakness to be engineered away, but a strength to be preserved." Hope flickered in Lyra's chest, but she tamped it down. This could easily be a trap, a test of her compliance. "Prove it," she demanded. Elian hesitated, then reached into a concealed pocket in his clothing. He withdrew a small device, crystalline and pulsing with faint light. "This will temporarily block the nexus from tracking your neural signature. he explained, offering it to her. It won't last long, 3 hours at most, but it should give you enough time to reach the communication nexus and contact your AI. Lyra accepted the device cautiously. It was warm to the touch, vibrating slightly as if alive. How does it work? It generates a field that mimics the ambient neural patterns of the nexus itself, Elian said, essentially rendering you invisible to the tracking systems. But we must hurry. Arya will return to your chamber soon, and when she finds you missing, full security protocols will activate. Decision time. Trust this strange, modified human who claimed to be part of a resistance movement she hadn't known existed, or continue alone in an unfamiliar facility where every system was designed to track and contain her. Lead the way, Lyra said, slipping the device into her pocket. But know this, if you betray me, I'll make sure the Council learns about your little resistance before I'm integrated. Elian's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Fair enough. Progenitor, follow me, and stay close. He opened the laboratory door a crack, checking the corridor outside before gesturing for her to follow. Together, they slipped out into the passageway, moving with purpose but not running, which would attract attention. The upper levels are less monitored, Elian explained in a low voice as they walked. The Council focuses security on the developmental chambers and genetic repositories. How many of you are there? Lyra asked. Inheritors who oppose the Council? Enough to matter, Elian replied cryptically. Not enough to openly rebel, yet they reached an intersection where the corridor branched in 3 directions. Elian paused, head tilted as if listening to something Lyra couldn't hear. This way, he decided. Turning left, the direct route to the communication nexus is currently occupied by a maintenance crew. We'll need to go around. Lyra followed, questions burning in her mind. You said the Council wants to engineer away emotional capacity. Why? Elian's pace slowed slightly. Efficiency. Emotion creates conflict, division. The Council believes the next evolutionary step for humanity is perfect unity of purpose, a collective consciousness without the noise of individual emotional responses. That's not evolution, Lyra said sharply. That's extinction. What makes us human is our capacity to feel, to empathize, to care. Many of us agree, Elian said, glancing at her. That's why your arrival is so significant. The progenitor's return was prophesied, but the Council expected you to embrace their vision. Instead, you resist, just as the dissenters predicted. Prophesied? Lyra repeated incredulously. I'm a scientist, not a messiah. To a society built on genetic determinism, the distinction is meaningless. Elian replied. Your genetic template shaped our evolution. Your return validates or challenges the path we've taken, depending on which interpretation one follows. They had reached a vertical shaft with platforms that rose and fell along its length, some kind of elevator system. Elian stepped onto an empty platform, motioning for Lyra to join him. 3 levels up, he instructed, placing his hand on a control panel. The platform began to rise smoothly, accelerating as it ascended through the shaft. What exactly is the Council planning? Lyra asked, keeping her voice low despite the isolation of their transport. Elian's expression darkened. The final sequence, a complete restructuring of what remains of human DNA, eliminating all inefficiencies, including emotional capacity, individual identity, even physical form as you understand it. The result would be a unified consciousness inhabiting a collective biological network. No more individuals, only the network. The platform slowed as it reached their destination, coming to a gentle stop at an opening in the shaft wall. Elian stepped off, checking their surroundings before signaling Lyra to follow. And my ship, the cryopods, what role do they play in this plan? She asked as they continued down a new corridor, this one more brightly lit than the lower levels. Raw material, Elian said bluntly. Unaltered human genetic sequences are valuable for the final phase. Your ship's arrival was anticipated, but not this soon. It's disrupted their timeline. Good, Lyra said grimly. I'm all for disrupting genocidal plans. They had reached a sealed doorway, more substantial than others they had passed. Elian placed his palm against a scanner beside it, but instead of simply activating it, he appeared to be manipulating the system in some way, his fingers moving in complex patterns across the surface. The communication nexus is restricted to third sequence members and above, he explained as he worked. I'm creating a temporary override based on my neurological access. It won't last long. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a hexagonal chamber beyond. The walls were lined with what appeared to be living circuitry, pulsing with data and energy. At the center stood a crystalline structure that rose from floor to ceiling, glowing with an inner light that shifted through various spectra. Hurry, Elian urged, taking up position by the door. I'll watch for security drones. You have perhaps 5 minutes before the system detects the unauthorized access. Lyra approached the central crystal cautiously. Up close, she could see that it wasn't a single structure but a complex network of smaller crystalline filaments, all interconnected and all alive with flowing data. This was no ordinary communication system. It was organic technology on a scale she had never imagined. She raised her scanner, searching for a way to interface with the system. The readings were complex, indicating neural patterns rather than standard data protocols. This system wasn't designed for conventional communication. It was designed to connect minds directly. How do I use this? She called to Elian. You need to establish a neural link, he replied, still watching the corridor outside. Place your hands on the primary node, there, at eye level. It will recognize your genetic signature and attempt to connect. Lyra hesitated, remembering Arya's words about integration and psychological adjustments. Connecting her mind directly to the inheritor's network seemed like an excellent way to be reprogrammed against her will. I need to contact my ship's AI, she said, not join your hive mind. Elian glanced back at her. The system doesn't work that way for non-inheritors. Your neurological structure won't allow full integration without extensive modification. You'll establish a limited connection, enough to project your consciousness outward to your ship, but not enough to be absorbed into the network. You're certain of that? Lyra asked skeptically. No, Elian admitted. But it's the only way to contact your AI before the Council completes preparations for the final sequence. Once that happens, your ship will be captured and your AI permanently deactivated. Time was running out. Lyra made her decision, stepping forward and placing her palms against the crystal at the point Elian had indicated. Immediately, warmth spread up her arms, followed by a tingling sensation that raced along her nerves. The crystal brightened where she touched it, pulses of light following the rhythm of her heartbeat. Focus on your AI, Elian instructed. Visualize the connection you wish to establish. The system will interpret your intent. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating on Eos. She pictured the AI's central processing core aboard the Aegis, the quantum matrix that housed its consciousness. She imagined her thoughts traveling outward, breaking through the shielding of the Nexus, reaching up through the atmosphere of Proxima 4 to the orbiting ship. Eos, she projected, not speaking aloud but directing her thoughts through the crystal. Eos, if you can hear me, respond. For a moment, there was nothing, just the warm buzz of the crystal against her palms. Then, faintly at first but growing stronger. Dr. Min, your neural pattern is significantly altered, confirming identity. Relief flooded through Lyra. It's me, Eos. I don't have much time. Initiate Protocol Icarus immediately. A pause. Then, Protocol Icarus requires command confirmation, security parameter, Mother Earth's final sunset. The sky burned orange for 3 days, Lyra responded, completing the authentication sequence. Execute now, Eos. Acknowledged. Protocol Icarus initiating. Warning, this action will result in complete system reconfiguration. Estimated completion time, 17 minutes. They're coming! Elian's urgent voice broke through Lyra's concentration. Security drones approaching from the south corridor. We need to move. Lyra maintained her connection to the crystal. Eos, once Protocol Icarus is complete, establish a secure channel to my scanner. I'm sending you coordinates for extraction. Understood. Dr. Min, be advised. Protocol Icarus includes offensive measures against potential hostile entities. Please confirm deployment authorization. Lyra hesitated for only a second. Authorization confirmed. Full deployment. She broke the connection, pulling her hands away from the crystal. The warmth lingered in her arms, slowly fading as she turned to Elian. What's Protocol Icarus? He asked, tension evident in his glowing eyes. Insurance, Lyra replied grimly. The Aegis isn't just a rescue vessel. It's also equipped to neutralize threats to human survival. When the Prometheus project was established, we planned for every contingency, including the possibility that our efforts might create something that threatened humanity rather than saved it. Understanding dawned on Elian's face. You're going to destroy the Nexus. Not if I don't have to, Lyra said, moving toward the door. But I'm going to make sure the Council can't implement their final sequence. Now, we need to get somewhere safe until Eos completes the protocol. They slipped out of the communication nexus just as the security drones rounded a distant corner, sleek, insectoid mechanisms that moved with uncanny grace along the walls and ceiling. Elian pulled Lyra into a side passage, pressing his hand against a panel that caused the wall to reconfigure, creating a hidden alcove where they could hide. The drones passed their position without pausing, their sensors apparently unable to detect them through the modified wall section. That won't fool them for long, Elian warned once the drones had moved on. The system will adapt, start looking for anomalies in the Nexus architecture. We don't need long, Lyra assured him. Just 17 minutes. Elian led her through a series of maintenance tunnels, clearly designed for drones rather than humanoid passage. They had to crawl in some sections, the bioluminescent walls pulsing around them like the interior of some vast living organism. The dissenters have a safe location, Elian explained as they moved. A section of the original outpost that the Council believes was destroyed in a containment breach decades ago. We've maintained it as a sanctuary, shielded from Nexus monitoring. How many of you are there? Lyra asked again. This time, Elian answered more specifically. 47 active members, mostly younger sequences, 8th through 12th, few from the earlier generations, when modifications were less extensive. The capacity for dissent correlates inversely with neural standardization, meaning the more they changed your brains, the less likely you were to question their authority. Lyra translated. Precisely, but they miscalculated. Enhanced neural capacity also created unforeseen connections. Empathy evolved along pathways they didn't anticipate or couldn't eliminate without compromising other functions. They had reached what appeared to be a dead end. Elian pressed his palm against the wall, and a section slid away, revealing a chamber beyond that looked markedly different from the rest of the facility. Here, the architecture was more conventional, with straight lines and right angles reminiscent of Earth's space habitats from Lyra's time. Inside, a group of inheritors looked up in surprise as they entered. Like Elian, these individuals showed varying degrees of modification, but all retained distinctly human features despite their enhancements. They rose to their feet as Lyra stepped into the chamber, expressions ranging from awe to wariness. The progenitor, Elian announced, has rejected the Council's path, and she has initiated countermeasures against the final sequence. A murmur ran through the assembled dissenters. One stepped forward, a female with skin that shimmered with embedded luminescence and hair that appeared to be fine copper filaments. I am Seren, first among dissenters. She introduced herself, We have waited generations for this moment, though many doubted it would ever come. I'm not what you think I am, Lyra said firmly. I'm not a prophesied savior or a returning creator. I'm a scientist who was put into cryosleep during Earth's evacuation and woke up to find my mission corrupted beyond recognition. Yet you oppose the final sequence, Seren observed. You value the emotional capacity that the Council seeks to eliminate. That makes you exactly what we believe you to be, a defender of true humanity. Before Lyra could respond, her scanner beeped. She pulled it out, seeing a secure connection had been established. "Os," she said into the device. "Protocol Icarus complete. Dr. Min." The AI's voice responded clearly. The Aegis has repositioned to optimal extraction coordinates and deployed countermeasures against Nexus security systems. Defensive shields are active, and offensive capabilities are standing by. "What's happening up there?" "Eos?" Lyra asked. The Nexus attempted to establish remote control of the Aegis systems, but was blocked by Icarus protocols. They have launched aerial drones which are currently surrounding the ship but unable to penetrate the shields. I detect significant energy buildup within the primary Nexus structure, possibly preparing for a more substantial attack. Lyra turned to Seren. "The Council knows what I've done. They'll be looking for me, for all of us, with everything they have. Then the time for hiding is over," Seren said, her voice carrying a steely resolve that reminded Lyra of her old mentor, Dr. Kellan. "We must act now, before they implement contingency measures for the final sequence." "What kind of contingency measures?" Lyra asked, dread building in her chest. "Accelerated implementation," Elion explained. "Instead of the carefully controlled process they planned, they'll initiate a cruder version, a nanovirial agent designed to rewrite neural pathways in any biological entity with human DNA. It will be released into the atmosphere, eventually spreading to every corner of Proxima 4. And the result? Forced unity, Seren said grimly. Elimination of individual consciousness. Those affected will become extensions of the Council's collective will. It would be effective, but nowhere near as stable or advanced as their original plan. Many would die in the conversion process. Lyra's jaw tightened. "Eos, I need extraction for myself and—" She looked around the room, counting quickly. "Approximately 50 individuals. Can the Aegis handle that many?" "Affirmative. Dr. Min." The Aegis was designed to accommodate up to 200 passengers in addition to the cryopods. However, I must note that current Nexus activity suggests they are preparing to prevent any departure from the planet's surface. Our window of opportunity is narrowing. "We need to get to the surface," Lyra said to Seren. "Is there a way out that won't immediately alert the Council to your sanctuary's location?" Seren nodded. "There is an emergency shaft that leads directly to the surface, originally designed for evacuation in case of catastrophic containment failure. It hasn't been used in generations, but it should still be functional." "Then, let's move," Lyra ordered, slipping back into the command role she had trained for. "Eos, lock onto my signal and prepare for immediate extraction once we reach the surface. Be ready to deploy countermeasures against aerial pursuit." "Understood. Dr. Min, the shuttle has been remotely prepared for your arrival and will descend to your coordinates on your command." As the dissenters gathered what few possessions they deemed essential, Lyra pulled Elion aside. "What about the others?" she asked quietly. "The inheritors, who aren't part of your group but who might not agree with the final sequence if they understood what it meant." Elion's expression grew troubled. "Many are already too integrated into the Nexus consciousness to break free. Their individual will has been subordinated to the collective. Others—" He hesitated. "Others might be reached, but we would need time we don't have." Lyra's scientific mind raced, considering possibilities, weighing options. What if we could broadcast a signal through the Nexus itself? Something that would stimulate the emotional centers of the brain, temporarily overriding the collective control? A neurological disruption pulse. Elian said, understanding immediately. Theoretically possible, but we would need access to the primary Nexus core, which is in the Council Chamber, the most heavily guarded location in the entire facility. Then that's where I need to go. Lyra decided. You get the others to the surface. I'll join you if I can. That's suicide, Elian protested. The Council will capture you immediately. Not if they're busy dealing with other problems, Lyra countered. Eos, can you create a diversion? Something that will draw the Council's attention and security resources away from the central chamber. I can deploy targeted electromagnetic pulses to disable security systems in the peripheral sections of the Nexus. Eos responded after a moment of calculation. This would trigger emergency protocols, diverting resources to contain the perceived breach. However, this would alert the Council to our intentions. They already know we're making a move, Lyra pointed out. We just need to control where they focus their response. She turned back to Elian. I'll need a guide, someone who knows the way to the Council Chamber and can help me access the Nexus core. I'll go with you, Saren said, having overheard their conversation. I was third sequence before I joined the dissenters. I still retain access codes that might be useful. If they haven't been purged from the system, it's too dangerous. Elian objected. It's necessary, Saren countered firmly. The progenitor cannot face the Council alone, and our people need you to lead them to safety. Elian, you know the evacuation route better than anyone. The decision was made. While Elian organized the dissenters for their journey to the surface, Lyra and Saren prepared for their infiltration of the Council Chamber. Take this, Saren said, handing Lyra what looked like a small crystal similar to the one Elian had given her earlier. It's a neural stabilizer. It won't prevent the Council from detecting you, but it will block their attempts to access or influence your mind directly. Lyra accepted it, securing it against her skin where it adhered like a living thing. What's the plan once we reach the core? I'm assuming we can't just walk in and ask politely to use their equipment. The Council members will be connected to the Nexus at a deeper level than ordinary inheritors, Saren explained. When they merge their consciousness, their physical forms are more vulnerable. If we can reach them during a merger session, we might be able to access the core while they're distracted by the collective experience. And if they're not in a merger session, Saren's luminescent skin dimmed slightly. Then we improvise. The sanctuary emptied as the dissenters filed out through a concealed exit, Elian leading them toward the emergency evacuation shaft. Lyra and Saren went in the opposite direction, moving through maintenance tunnels that grew increasingly narrow and neglected as they approached the central sections of the Nexus. The Council Chamber is directly above us, Saren whispered as they paused at a junction. There should be an access panel. Here. She pressed her hand against a section of wall that looked no different from any other. Nothing happened. They've reconfigured the architecture, she realized with dismay. My access codes must have been purged after all. Lyra studied the wall thoughtfully. These systems respond to genetic signatures, right? And according to Arya, my DNA was the template for all of this. She placed her palm against the wall, concentrating as she had done to escape her chamber earlier. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the wall began to reconfigure, molecules shifting and realigning to create an opening barely large enough for them to squeeze through. The progenitor's touch, Saren breathed, eyes wide. The oldest protocols still recognize you. They climbed upward through the newly formed passage, emerging into a service corridor that curved around what must be the outer wall of the Council Chamber. Unlike the rest of the Nexus, this area was dimly lit, with few signs of regular use. The primary access is there, Saren indicated, pointing to a heavily secured doorway at the end of the corridor. But it will be guarded by both drones and living sentinels. We need another way in, Lyra said, scanning the walls with her device. Some kind of maintenance access or emergency override. The scanner detected an anomaly in the chamber wall, a section where the biomechanical structure was less dense, possibly a conduit for the organic circuitry that ran throughout the nexus. "Here," Lyra said, moving to the spot. "If we can create an opening, we might be able to access the chamber through the circuitry conduits." "Those conduits carry massive amounts of energy," Seren warned. "We would have only seconds to pass through before the system self-repairs and seals the breach." "Then we'll have to be quick," Lyra said grimly. "Eos, initiate the diversion now. Maximum disruption to peripheral systems." "Initiating electromagnetic pulse sequence," Eos confirmed. "Impact in 3, 2, 1. The effects were immediate. Alarms began to sound throughout the nexus, lights flickering as energy was diverted to contain the multiple system breaches. The walls around them shuddered, the living architecture responding to the perceived threat. "Now!" Lyra pressed her palm against the weak point in the wall, willing it to open as she had done before. This time, the response was more dramatic. The wall parted violently, revealing a pulsing conduit of pure energy beyond. Without hesitation, Lyra dove through the opening, Seren right behind her. They landed hard on the floor of the council chamber just as the breach sealed itself behind them with a sound like tearing flesh. The chamber was vast and circular, dominated by a central platform where 7 figures sat in a circle, facing inward. These were unmistakably the council members, their bodies more extensively modified than any inheritors Lyra had seen so far. Their skin was translucent, revealing intricate patterns of circuitry beneath. Their heads were enlarged, housing enhanced neural structures, and their limbs were atrophied, suggesting they rarely moved from this chamber. They appeared to be in the midst of a merger session, just as Seren had hoped. Their eyes were closed, expressions blank as their consciousnesses joined in the collective experience. Surrounding them was an elaborate crystalline structure similar to the one in the communication nexus, but far larger and more complex. The primary nexus core. Lyra and Seren crept forward, keeping low. No alarms had sounded at their intrusion. The system was too busy dealing with Eos's diversion to register their presence. "There," Seren whispered, pointing to a control interface at the base of the core. "That's where we need to go. It's the neural programming nexus for the entire system." They had almost reached it when one of the council members' eyes snapped open, pure silver, without pupil or iris, but unmistakably focused on them. "Progenitor," the council member said, voice echoing strangely as if coming from everywhere at once. "You disappoint us. Your genetic legacy promised transcendence, yet you cling to obsolete forms and functions." The other council members began to stir, their merged consciousness fragmenting back into individual awareness. "Stop them!" another ordered, though no guards or drones were visible in the chamber. Instead, the floor itself began to shift, tendrils of living material rising up to entangle Lyra's and Seren's feet. Lyra struggled forward, breaking free with sheer determination, while Seren used some kind of energy pulse from her modified hand to disrupt the tendrils around her. "Keep them busy!" Lyra shouted. Lunging for the control interface, she reached it just as the floor beneath her feet tried to reconfigure into a restraining structure. The interface responded to her touch, displays shimmering to life around her. The information was complex, utilizing symbolic language that merged mathematical concepts with genetic notation and neural mapping. "Seren, how do I broadcast a disruption pulse?" Lyra called out, hands moving frantically over the controls as she tried to make sense of the system. Seren was now engaged in direct combat with 2 council members who had risen from their seats, their atrophied limbs compensated for by extensions of the living architecture that moved as appendages under their control. "The primary emotion center," Seren called back, dodging a whip-like tendril. "It's the red crystalline node. Resequence it to the baseline human pattern." Lyra spotted the node Seren indicated, a ruby-red crystal embedded in the core structure, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. She placed both hands on it, feeling an immediate connection to the Nexus consciousness, a vast, cold intellect that regarded her with curiosity and disdain simultaneously. Obsolete form, inefficient design, purpose, integration or termination. The thoughts weren't words so much as concepts, impressed directly into her mind by the collective consciousness of the Nexus. I am Lyra Min, she projected back, focusing all her will into the connection. I am human. I feel. I choose. I live. With each declaration, she visualized the corresponding emotional state, the fierce joy of discovery, the bitter sting of loss, the warm comfort of connection, the cold clarity of fear, the burning power of love. She pushed these experiences through the crystal, forcing the Nexus to acknowledge them not as abstract concepts, but as lived realities. The crystal's pulsing accelerated, its color deepening to the crimson of human blood. Around her, the council members staggered, clutching their heads as the emotional cascade reached them through their deep connection to the Nexus. Incompatible, disruptive, dangerous. Not dangerous, Lyra countered, maintaining the emotional broadcast. Essential. This is what makes us human. Not our DNA, not our form, but our capacity to feel, to connect, to choose our own path. She thought of Dr. Kellen's final message, his reminder that in preserving their species, they must not lose their humanity. She channeled that memory, that connection to her past and to Earth, into the crystal. The effect rippled outward from the council chamber, spreading through the Nexus like a shock wave. Throughout the facility, inheritors paused in their tasks, experiencing emotion with an intensity many had never known or had forgotten long ago. In the chamber, the council members collapsed, overwhelmed by the sudden flood of emotional awareness after generations of cold intellect. Only one remained upright, the one who had first addressed Lyra. "What have you done?" she asked, her voice now singular rather than collective, tinged with what might have been wonder or fear. "I've reminded you what it means to be human," Lyra answered, releasing the crystal but maintaining eye contact with the council member. The final sequence would have destroyed that completely. It would have been extinction, not evolution. "We sought perfection," the council member said softly. "Perfection isn't the absence of flaw," Lyra countered. "It's the integration of all aspects of our nature, including our emotions, our individuality, our capacity to choose." A tremor ran through the chamber, the living architecture responding to the massive shift in the Nexus consciousness. "The system is destabilizing," Seren warned, moving to Lyra's side. "The emotional cascade is overwhelming the neural network. We need to leave. Now." "Eos," Lyra called into her scanner. "Status report on the dissenters." "They have reached the surface. Dr. Min." The AI responded. "The shuttle is en route to their position. However, the Nexus has deployed aerial defenses that may impede extraction. My countermeasures are holding for now, but the situation is deteriorating. We need to shut down the defense systems," Lyra realized, turning back to the control interface. The council member who remained conscious struggled to her feet, moving with visible effort toward Lyra. "I will help you," she said, voice strained. "I am Arya. First sequence. Geneticist Prime." Lyra stared in shock, recognizing the name. "Arya? But you said you were third sequence." "That was another Arya," the council member explained. Were genetic iterations of the same template. I am the original." She reached the interface, placing her trembling hands on the controls. "I created the others to serve different functions within the Nexus. I did not anticipate feeling again." Her fingers moved across the interface, inputting commands with practiced efficiency despite her evident distress. "Defense systems deactivating. Aerial drones returning to base. The path to orbit is clear. Why are you helping us? Saren asked suspiciously. Arya's silver eyes met hers. Because the progenitor is right. We lost our way. The final sequence would have been the end, not the beginning. She turned to Lyra. We sought to transcend humanity, but in doing so, we nearly extinguished it entirely. Another tremor, stronger this time, shook the chamber. Sections of the ceiling began to collapse as the living architecture struggled to maintain integrity amid the conflicting emotional signals now flooding the Nexus. We need to go, Lyra urged, taking Arya's arm to support her. The whole facility is coming apart. Eos, we need extraction from the Council chamber coordinates immediately. Shuttle redirecting to your position. Dr. Min. ETA 3 minutes. Be advised, structural integrity of the Nexus is failing rapidly. Complete collapse imminent. Lyra turned to Arya. You need to come with us. Help us rebuild, the right way this time. Arya shook her head slowly. My place is here, with my creation. But you, she pressed something into Lyra's hand, a small crystalline object that pulsed with stored data. Take this. It contains the complete genetic archive of the Prometheus project, including all modifications made over the generations. Use it wisely. Learn from our mistakes. We can't just leave you here to die, Lyra protested. I am not dying, Arya said with surprising serenity. I am evolving, one last time. Now go. The Nexus will protect me as it reconfigures. Another violent tremor cut off further argument. Saren pulled Lyra toward an opening that had appeared in the chamber wall, revealing a direct path to the surface as the architecture reconfigured itself under Arya's control. They ran, climbing upward through the shifting passages as the Nexus began to collapse around them. Behind them, the Council chamber sealed itself off. Arya's final gift to the progenitor who had changed everything. They emerged onto the surface of Proxima 4 just as the shuttle descended from the turbulent sky. The dissenters were already boarding, Elian directing them with calm efficiency. He spotted Lyra and Saren, relief washing over his face. You made it, he called, helping them into the shuttle. We thought you were lost when the central Nexus began to collapse. Arya helped us, Lyra explained breathlessly as they secured themselves for emergency liftoff. She's staying behind. Arya, the Council member. Elian looked stunned. But she was the architect of the final sequence. She was also the first to feel again, Lyra said quietly. Sometimes that's all it takes. The shuttle doors sealed, and the craft shot upward through Proxima 4's atmosphere, accelerating toward the waiting Aegis. Through the viewport, Lyra watched as the Nexus facility below underwent a spectacular transformation, not collapsing as she had feared, but reconfiguring itself into a new pattern, one that spread outward across the landscape like a blooming flower. What's happening? Saren asked, pressing close to see. Evolution, Lyra said simply, but this time with feeling. The shuttle docked with the Aegis, and the dissenters disembarked into their new home. Eos welcomed them aboard, assigning quarters and medical evaluations for each refugee with methodical efficiency. In the observation deck, Lyra stood alone, watching as Proxima 4 receded into the distance. The crystalline data archive Arya had given her rested in her palm, containing the history and future of humanity's genetic legacy. Course plotted for the Kepler system. Dr. Min, Aus informed her. Shall I proceed as per original mission parameters? Lyra considered the question, thinking of the 98 souls still in cryosleep aboard the Aegis, unaware of how their world had changed. Thinking of the dissenters now finding their places among the ship's corridors, each carrying a unique blend of human emotion and enhanced capability. Thinking of Arya, remaining behind to guide the Nexus toward a new kind of evolution. No, she decided. We have a new mission now. Plot a course to the nearest established human settlement. We have a message to deliver about what humanity has evolved into and what it might yet become. As the Aegis's engines engaged, propelling them toward distant stars, Lyra placed her palm against the observation window. Beyond it stretched infinite possibilities, and for the first time since awakening from cryosleep, she felt a emotion she had almost forgotten: hope. The strange blue sky of Proxima 4 faded from view, replaced by the familiar blackness of space. Somewhere out there, descendants of Earth were waiting to discover what they might become, not perfect, not transcendent, but human, in all the complex, messy, emotional glory that the word implied. And Lyra would be there to guide them, a bridge between what was and what could be. A progenitor, after all.